Welcome on in to the latest edition of the Blue Horseshoe podcast. He is George Bremer. I am Ryan Hickey with you on this Tuesday afternoon. And George, now that rookie minicamp has come and gone, we have finally seen Anthony Richardson, albeit in a very small sample size, finally in a Colts uniform, throwing footballs, passing to teammates, getting some work with the coaching staff. I think it's a good time now to start talking about what this Colts offense could look like in 2023 and beyond. We've heard Shane Steichen especially talk about how his goal is to build the offense to the quarterback for a large part of this offseason. Obviously, we had no idea who the quarterback was going to be. Now we have some answers. So let's start diving into what this offense actually could look like in 2023 and beyond. But before we give our answer, I want to dive into some quotes first from Jonathan Taylor, who was on the Horseshoe Huddle earlier this week. A really, really good interview. I do highly suggest you check that out. And he had some really interesting comments about what the offense could look like and what Anthony Richardson reminds him of. So this is Jonathan Taylor on the Horseshoe Huddle. Quote, Richardson reminds me of Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson. Looking at the size component, you throw Cam Newton in there as well. He's a physical threat. As long as he comes in willing to absorb the information, it's going to get real scary out there on the field for opposing defenses, end quote. So Jonathan Taylor with some strong words already saying it's going to be quote unquote scary hours, basically, unquote, out there on the field for opponents starting in 2023 and beyond. In order for the Colts to reach that scary level, George, that Jonathan Taylor is talking about, what does the offense in your mind have to look like in 2023 and beyond?
It starts with Richardson. I mean, I think we need to, in some ways, slow down the train a little bit here and understand that this is a 20-year-old guy. He's going to turn 21 at the end of this month. And that there's unbelievable physical talent. That's why everybody is as excited as they are. I think you've seen that. Just go back and watch the combine and you'll see, why the physical skill here is through the roof. But it didn't all come together at Florida, and there's a reason for that. And I think a lot of that was just inexperience. When you hear the Colts talk, you always hear that word with them, that what he's missing is experience. And I think the reason is all the pieces are there. I think that's the good news with them. They're there physically, but they seem to be there from what you can gauge from the outside without sitting him down and watching film with them or putting him on a board, which none of us are able to do. The mental aspects seem to be there. You can see him making reads, out there on the field. You can see him adjusting on the go. But I think the thing has the Colts most excited, and the thing that might give him the best chance to play early on is his pocket presence, his ability to feel the pressure, to move around within the pocket. And he's a guy, I think it's surprising when you see a guy that big and that fast, you're thinking he wants to run all the time. He's going to tuck it first opportunity. That's not really his style. He's more Patrick Mahomes in terms of looking down the field, still in his mindset, still looking to throw the ball. So I think, how all that plays into the offense is going to be interesting to see. Philadelphia is the obvious template. I think, people are probably shocked by hearing that right now, just stunned that that's where it's going. But I don't think it's as one-to-one as it sometimes portrayed, because I think Hurts at times, especially when he was young, looked to run more often than I think Richardson will. And Jonathan Taylor is a different aspect. No offense to Miles Sanders, who had a great year and, is a really good running back. They haven't had anybody like Jonathan Taylor in that Philly offense. So it's going to cause, I remember when Pep Hamilton was here, one of his favorite phrases is you want to cause conflict for the defense.
Mm-hmm.
And all he meant was give them some doubt about what you're going to do. And just having Richardson and Taylor on the field causes conflict. Just them being in the backfield together. Is he going to keep the ball? Is he going to give it to the running back? Is it an RPO? Is he going to end up throwing it downfield? Defenses have conflict from day one.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see a lot of play action as a result of that. You're going to see the RPO run. And you would figure that the running game is going to be the early focus, right? I mean, that's where you've got a guy who led the NFL in rushing. You've got a young quarterback that can run. It just makes sense that they're going to probably lean early on the run game, and I would say the deep ball, because that's probably the best part of Richardson's passing repertoire right now. So, play action, throw it deep. At the end of the day, this is probably really good news for Alec Pierce, because you figure that fly route down the sideline is going to get used quite a bit this year, and Richardson's got the arm to get it to him.
I'm so glad you mentioned pocket presence and even making the Mahomes comparison in terms of playing style, because I think you're spot on. Like, when we're talking about what this Colts offense should look like in 2023, I would say, honestly, like a more balanced version of the Bills offense. Like, I would not say it should look like the Eagles offense, should look like the Ravens offense. I think it should look a lot like more of a more balanced, because you have Jonathan Taylor compared to the Bills have not really been able to establish a running game outside of Josh Allen. But you look at what that Buffalo offense does, it is a balanced attack where they do try to, maybe sometimes they get a little out of hand passing the ball too much compared to running the ball, but it is, a balanced offense where it is a lot of Josh Allen runs. But when Josh Allen is running, he's running. Sure, there are a few designed runs, and at Florida, there's a few designed runs for Anthony Richardson as well. But I think a lot of their rushing attempts, both Richardson at Florida and Allen with the Bills, is when nothing's open, making a play. Like, I think they are both look to pass first quarterbacks. And then when nothing's open, okay, let me make a play with my legs. Then all of a sudden, let me, go pick up 10 yards or make a move on a linebacker and try to get a first down. But it's, you look to pass first, nothing's there, let me make a play. It's not, we're going to call 15 designed quarterback runs, run you up the middle, run zone reads all the time, and have it almost be a Cam Newton or Lamar Jackson kind of flex bone, run first sort of offense. Like, you look at Florida's offense, and I watched two games early this morning on purpose, the Utah game to start the season and the Florida State game to end the season, to kind of see the bookends of where the offense changed what Richardson was comfortable in. And you watch both of those games, Richardson is comfortable in the pocket, like you mentioned. He has good pocket presence. He is a guy that, sure, his number is called to run the ball, but it's not a huge part of the Florida offense. They run a lot with their running backs more than they run with Anthony Richardson. And again, even this is a guy that I saw both in the beginning and the end of the season. This is a guy that even when there's pressure on him in the pocket, he's not bailing at the first sign of trouble. He's not bailing out of the pocket when his first read on offense is covered. He still stays in the pocket and he tries to stay in there as long as he can to make a throw with his arm. Then if nothing's open, or then if it's just unescapable pressure, now it's okay, let me make a play with my feet. But you look at him, you look at the size, we talk about, the size, the speed, his athletic ability. You would think he is going to be in the mold of a Justin Fields, of a Jalen Hurts, like you mentioned, of a Lamar Jackson. And he's really not. And that's why I would say it should look more like the Bills offense in 2023, where they will definitely, with Jonathan Taylor, be able to run the ball better and take take some pressure off Anthony Richardson's plate. But you look at, there will be designed run calls for sure, without a doubt. But a lot of Josh Allen's running, I would say, is more scrambling and making plays. I think we'll see a lot of that with Anthony Richardson, where if he finishes the season with 100, let's say, rushing attempts, I would probably argue at least 60 to 65 of those would be not designed run, just, hey, that's what the defense gave you, I'm going to take it more so than, hey, we're going to run the ball 10 times with our quarterback specifically. So I think when it comes to how it's going to look, I would say it looks more Bills and Josh Allen-y than it would look, let's say, Eagles and Jalen Hurts.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, honestly, you're going to need to look at college football for this first year. I think it's going to be a college-oriented attack. That's how Philly started. I mean, if you go back and look at Hurts year one, it was a lot more run-based. It was a lot more college kind of concepts. And then as they added A.J. Brown and Hurts got more experience, I should say year one as a starter. Year one, Hurts was obviously coming in for Carson Wentz. But the first full year he was a starter. You go back, you look at the Eagles then, which would have been Shane Steichen's first year as the offense coordinator. You see a lot more college concepts out there. And I think you're going to see that here early on, because it's what makes sense with a rookie who's inexperienced. You're going to have a lot of half-field reads. And I think that might lead to more of those scrambles that you're talking about early on, because they may very well tell him, here's, you're reading half the field over here. You're reading this particular defender. If he does this, throw the ball to him. If he does that, throw the ball to the other person. If you're not sure what you're seeing, or if it's not developing quick enough, get out and run. I think you're going to see a lot of that as a rookie, because it's a way to help bring him along get him comfortable. And then even as the season goes, I think you'll see that grow and they'll open up more. That's not to say he can't handle full field reads or anything like that. There's nothing I've seen that suggests that he can't read the defense or he can't do those things. It's just early on when you're trying to get him experience at this level, make it as simple as possible. Give him quick reads, quick decisions. I think you saw that with Justin Fields last year in Chicago. You know, the idea of, hey, get it out quick or just run. And some of that I think is due to the offensive line. You know, that's going to be a big component of this. You go back to Philly, that offensive line was just bullies. I mean, go watch the Super Bowl. They're just blowing the Chiefs 3 or 4 or 5 yards off the line of scrimmage. You know, if the Colts right now, that's still a major question mark. Bernard Raymond finished the year well at left tackle, but you still don't really know what you've got there. I don't think anybody's ready to put him in the Pro Bowl or, you know, give him the starting job for the next 10 years. It maybe ends up at that level, but it's not there yet. And Will Fries, you know, was the last guy in the musical chairs game at right guard and would probably start the year as the, I guess, favorite, you know, over there. But you're still in the same spot you're in last year, where you've got two guys at two positions that you're just, let's see how it goes. And if the protection breaks down early on, then I think you're going to see even more of those college concepts because you're not going to have time for a deep drop. Now, what's interesting to me is he said, you know, Richardson, when he talked to us this weekend, one of the things he's adjusting to is 5-step drops out of the shotgun. So maybe that's one way that Shane Steichen's already accounting for the offensive line, maybe not being, you know, the best in the league right away. But it'll be interesting to see. I do think you're going to get quick reads, hot reads, simple concepts where it's essentially maybe 2 targets. And if it's not there, get out, make something happen with your legs.
I'm laughing when you mentioned the 5-step shotgun because, right, Richardson said at Florida he only did 3, so that's a way deeper drop than he's used to. Honestly, then my mind went right to, at this point, if the Colts can protect, put the long snapper out there, have Richardson be like 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage, use that cannon, but just give him an extra, make those defensive players run an extra 15 yards so that buys them an extra 2 seconds to read the defense and maybe give his receivers, a chance to get open.
I mean, that's I don't know how much they're going to use it. But that, I mean, that's what that's all about, right? Giving them an extra second or 2 to get the deep ball out. But that's why I honestly think you're going to see a lot of college concepts in year one, and you should. I'm not saying that, you know, like, oh, you got to dumb this down for anybody. It's just, it makes the most sense. The number one thing this guy's lacking is experience. So you don't want to throw him out there in a really complicated scheme and say from day one, you know, here, just go. It's like you just got your driver's license and we're going to put you drive stick shift. You know what I mean? Let's put him on auto for a little while. Let this go and let him grow. And then as he shows you he's confident, as he gains success in that, add a little bit every week.
I would agree with that, right? Don't put too much on him. Again, especially for 2023, this is going to be a progression. So if you got to start simple in week 1 and gradually add in concepts and reads and extra plays and, you know, tweak things, so be it, George. Like, right, we've talked a lot on this pod. Patience in 2023 is going to be the word. That's kind of been already the operative word and the buzzword from everyone within the Colts once they made the Richardson pick. It has been patience. You know, so I don't think like that's absolutely the right way they should approach it. That's absolutely the right way they should go about 2023. But once things, like, you know, once you get past taking it slow and taking the training wheels off, what it should look like is, you know, again, a guy that is throwing a lot more than he's running and running more out of necessity than design game plan. Like, even go back to Florida last year in his only full year as a starter. He had 103 rushing attempts, Anthony Richardson did, in 12 games. That was 22% of Florida's rushing attempts. So that shows you, number one, that, again, they did not rely on him a ton to run the ball as part of the designed offense, and they relied a lot on their running backs. And you look at what the Colts have, and you hear Jonathan Taylor's quotes before about having a scary offense, and I want to read one other quote for you here in a second as well. But that is going to be a huge boost where you can be able absolutely to rely on Jonathan Taylor, and that alone should be able to take something off of Richardson's plate where you don't have to worry about him getting exposed to big hits let's say 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times a game, like you only average, I say only, but 8.5 rushing attempts. And again, I would argue about half of those were designed. So this is a guy that can pick his spots, can, break one, or at least protect himself where he's not just running between the tackles every time. Look at the Eagles offense with Jalen Hurts, and obviously that's been a popular offense we've talked about because that's where Shane Steichen came from. And obviously Jalen Hurts and Anthony Richardson have a lot of similarities physically. Look at Jalen Hurts last year in 14 games, so just 2 more than Richardson played last year. He had 165 rushing attempts. That was basically a third of the Eagles' rush attempts. They ran the ball a ton last year, and a third of that's on your quarterback, basically. That's a lot. That's a lot of wear and tear. That's a lot of exposure on Jalen Hurts. He ran the ball 11 times per game. So even though it's not that drastically different, 11 times for Jalen Hurts per game versus 8.5 times for Richardson a game, you look at the longevity, and for an organization that knows how, the quarterback getting beat up, how that could impact their future, I think it's also important to try to develop Anthony Richardson to be a passer first, because it also, in the long run, is going to help his longevity. You hear the Cam Newton comparisons. You hear the Lamar Jackson comparisons. Those are great comparisons, and physically, he fits both of those. But also, you look at both of their careers. Lamar, the last 2 years, could not finish the season because he's been injured. Cam Newton's career peaked in 2015 when he won the MVP. Then all of a sudden, after those 5, 6 years, kind of like luck, his body started breaking down, and he was nowhere near Superman, Super Cam, he's like to call himself, the back half of his career. So he had like 6 good years, but then really kind of after that, it tailed off and fell off a cliff pretty quickly. If you're the Colts right now, obviously you want Richardson to develop, and you want him to be the franchise quarterback. But also in that same breath, you want him to be around for longer than 6 years and playing at a high level, because that just drastically shrinks your window to win if you're going to kind of run him like a battering ram and leave him susceptible to getting worn down, like we've seen Lamar Jackson do recently and like we've seen Cam Newton do as well.
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely want to protect him from a physical standpoint. And, I think his deep ball is impressive enough. You want to take advantage of that. If he's able to scramble around a little bit and keep his eyes downfield and give these guys time to get down there, we know he's got the arm strength to get it down there. And I think guys like Michael Pittman, who's shown to be pretty good on 50-50 balls and also in improvisation, you could argue some of the best plays of his career were when Carson Wentz was scrambling around and trying to make something happen. And Pittman was the guy who eventually got open and gave him a target. And then Pierce just doing that fly route, I think is going to be huge. And also Josh Downs underneath. If defenses want to drop 8 and try to take away that deep ball, I think Josh Downs is going to be a guy who's open under the middle and can make a big play as well. So, yeah, you don't want to take away Richardson's passing ability. I think that's something that is kind of a misnomer. I think people are thinking, oh, he's going to run and he's a really raw passer. He's really not that raw of a passer. It's more a mechanical situation. And it's not like his mechanics are bad and they need to be redone. It's that he needs to be consistent with his mechanics. There are times when it looks really, really good. And there are other times where it looks really, really bad. And again, that's why I think you keep hearing the word experience with the Colts. He's a project in the sense that it's going to take time for him to get experience and to be consistent with what he does. But I don't think there's anything you want a quarterback to do that you haven't seen already from him on film.
And a lot of it too, George, is for the most part teachable. Accuracy we have seen is teachable and improvable. Footwork is improvable for sure. And that's something that Richardson has talked about, being the biggest area that he's focused on this offseason, improving. And I thought Dan Orlovsky last week on ESPN did a tremendous job of kind of highlighting that. Like you mentioned before, and we've talked about it, pocket presence you see for Richardson is really not a problem, which I would almost argue is an intangible that's really hard to teach, because that's just having your peripherals and almost understanding, okay, I feel pressure this way, let me step up, or I feel pressure this way, let me get out of here. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks, if you don't have that feel, you're going to get killed back there. You're just going to get teed off on. And it's really like, I don't know how you teach as a coach. Footwork, you could teach, hey, do this. Let's work on this. Connect your lower body to your upper body. Like, you can work on accuracy. You can work on footwork. And those two especially are connected together. Feel and pocket presence, George, not being a coach. So maybe I'm just speaking wrong here, but as someone who's been around football my entire life, I don't think it's really something you can actually teach, or teach to improve at a high at the highest level when you're in the NFL. And that's an area that he does excel in and is comfortable in. So like we talk about being a project, and you're 100% right there. It's more about consistency. And that's part of the reason why he went number 4 overall. We know he can do everything that he's going to be asked for, and he can do everything physically that you need an elite quarterback to do. But now it's, can you do it once and then do it again and then do it again and then do it throughout the course of an entire game, then do it throughout the course of an entire season, and then top it, 10 years in a row. That's what separates good quarterbacks from great quarterbacks from elite quarterbacks. And that's what Richardson has to work on. But consistency, in the sense that you're right, it's not like he can't do it. And the areas that he has to improve on are 1,000,000% correctable, compared to sometimes there are just some things you just can't teach. And if you're not good at them now, you're not going to be good at them in 5 years from now.
His pocket presence, like you said, I would say his pocket presence is elite. I mean, I think it's right there with Bryce Young in terms of understanding where the pressure is coming from and moving around in the pocket and getting himself to a spot where he needs to be to throw. His vision is really good. I mean, you see it. He makes bad decisions from time to time because everybody does. I don't care. Peyton Manning made bad decisions from time to time.
28 interceptions his rookie year. Would you call that bad decision making?
Right. I mean, it's going to happen. And game situations cost some of that too. I mean, if you're behind and you need to make a play, you're going to take a bigger risk, so those things come into play. But I just think the vision that he has, there's some plays that you look at on film where the defense changed the look after the snap. He's got one pre-snap look. Now the defense has changed the look, after the snap, and he recognizes that. And then he's got the physical skill to kind of make that change without really having to change anything physically, And I think that's going to be tough for NFL defenses. When he throws a 40-yard pass, it looks the same as when he throws a 10-yard pass. He doesn't need that windup. He doesn't need to suddenly make a lot of torque with his hips. He's just got that natural ability. So I think it's going to be hard to get some tells from, if you're a defensive back and you're peeking in the backfield, you might not get a lot of clues as to what he's going to do. He's done a good job with his eyes of moving defenders. There's a lot of things he does that like a veteran quarterback does, and he's 20. Now, again, it's got to come together, like you said, from one snap to the next, carry it over for an entire series, carry that over for an entire quarter, carry that over for an entire game. That's what he's not been able to do yet. Right. And that's why the Colts believe that will come with reps, and we'll see. We'll see if they're right. That's why the Colts made this bet. They think, hey, this is a guy that his biggest issue right now is inconsistency, and the biggest problem with that is experience. And the more he's on the field, the better he'll get at this. And that's why, again, in my mind, put him out there as early as he's ready to go.
I'm with you on that. I've definitely changed my tune. I'll be honest. I'm definitely someone who treats young rookie quarterbacks with kid gloves and don't rush them out there too fast and don't overwhelm them, especially if the team stinks. And look, the Colts have questions, but they are definitely first-round quarterbacks that have gone to way worse situations than right now what Anthony Richardson is in with the Colts. I look at right away C.J. Stroud, the Texans, as a situation that is not desirable, to say the least. So I'm with you there, right? The only way you get better, and a lot of coaches have said this, is by playing, getting reps, being on the field. And as long as he can handle, like I said, I think week 1 or as quick as possible, definitely should be the way to go. The last thing I'll say, George, when it comes to kind of style of offense and what he brings to the NFL, kind of going back to, being more of a passer than a runner, which again, I think is going to be huge in terms of keeping, him upright and durable for more than just a few seasons, is to your point about pocket presence. Not only is it just like really good, and again, his vision is really good, he's also a guy that keeps his eyes down the field. Like he's not, you look at Justin Fields, for example, with the Bears last year. That was the guy that I think partly because of the surrounding cast around him, but also partly just because that's kind of his style. He was a one-read guy, meaning he'll get the ball. Okay, this is my main target. He's covered. Well, now it's time to run. And you look at Anthony Richardson at Florida throughout the entire year. This is a guy that physically is a freak. We talked about his rushing attempts, 103. So he ran a solid amount, 8.5 a game, but he's also a guy that when there is pressure, when he does kind of move around the pocket, he still keeps his eyes down the field. And again, that's something that I don't think you could teach and try to ingrain in a quarterback, especially a young quarterback, to keep your eyes down the field and still keep the play alive with your arm instead of just looking to run at the first sign of danger. That only catches up, that can only help you out for so long. And that's almost, not a sustainable way to win long term if you're always kind of tucking in and running after your first read. You have to be able to throw the ball to win in the NFL. And one of the best, some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, George, are the best at making plays off script or keeping their eyes down the field when a play breaks down. Mahomes does it all the time. Allen does it. Burrow does it. And so far, at least in Florida, I think Anthony Richardson does a really good job of that as well, where he's not spooked and he's not just looking to run basically the first sign of danger.
That's what I was going to say. I think you're going to see a lot of broken play, improvisation type of things here because he's the guy that will step up in the pocket. That's where I think Pittman is going to come into play. I think that's where it's going to help him because he's shown in the past that he can kind of mirror the quarterback, run around back there with him and get himself open, keep a play alive. That's going to be a big part of this because I think you're going to see him step up in the pocket, avoid a defender, go another way, avoid that defender. And then when he gets some space, let the ball go. Like you said, that's what the best quarterbacks do. I think you could argue watching film, there are times that maybe he should run more often in those situations. He might look to pass even more than is necessary at times, just because sometimes I think he wants to attempt, because of his arm strength, because of his incredible physical ability, to attempt something that's probably a lot harder than it needs to be. There's a lane and take it and run. But that's all part of the progression. That's all part of the experience. Right. And I would rather have the quarterback that does that than the quarterback that puts his eyes down immediately and takes off.
I'm with you 100%. I think it's a lot easier to teach a quarterback to take what the defense gives you. And sometimes, like I said, if it's a 10-yard run, take it and get out of bounds or take it and slide instead of trying to make the hero throw. I'm 100% with you. I think it's a lot easier to coach him to settle down or take the lesser play, if you will, quote unquote, than is to do the other way of, hey, we got to teach you to play with your eyes up instead of playing with your eyes down. I think you're 100% right about that. Last thing I want to circle back to where we started this conversation, George, about Jonathan Taylor talking about the scary outfits this Colts could be, presenting to defenses in 2023 and beyond with Anthony Richardson if he develops. I also thought it was really interesting, Jonathan Taylor talking about what he needs to do for Anthony Richardson, especially in year one. And he, again, talking to Horseshoe Huddle, said, quote, "I'm letting Richardson know that I'm here and I have his back no matter what the case may be, whether that means running RPOs in pass protection or if he needs somebody as an outlet in the passing game. It could just mean me being efficient in the run game for him," end quote. I think that last point, George, is really where we'll see Jonathan Taylor explode and be most important. I don't think it's going to be, the RPO game. I don't think it's good because we talked about that's not a huge part of Richardson's game. I think it's going to be just the efficiency from Taylor and getting back to that 2021 form we saw from him where he's taking the ball and almost, you could count on 5 yards of carry. That's going to take a lot of pressure off of him. Shane Steichen himself has never really had a running back of Jonathan Taylor's caliber. He had Austin Eckler in LA. He had Miles Sanders, but really it was just a rotating cast of running backs in Philly those 2 years there. You have a true bell cow back that, when healthy, is someone who's really hard to bring down and can carry an offense on his back. I think that last point about Jonathan Taylor, being efficient in the run game, is the most important part for Taylor and the biggest thing he can do for Richardson in 2023, because you mentioned it before, the play action, the deep ball is going to be a huge part of Richardson's game and development. If you have Jonathan Taylor pounding away 5 yards of carry, that's going to open up the deep ball tremendously for this offense going forward.
Yeah, the NFL has changed so much in just the last 5 years in terms of what an offense looks like, how important the run game is, all these kinds of things. The one thing that still remains true, though, is the running game is still a young quarterback's best friend. You got a running back there who can make defenses, be aware of him. I saw some people early on saying, oh, well, they're just going to load the box against Richardson and Taylor. And I was like, first of all, that's easier said than done. When the quarterback's mobile, right, it's harder to load the box. You put a spy on Richardson, but who's going to be the guy with the athleticism and the size to spy him and get him down one-on-one? So, there's problems right away with that, just doing that. But also, you're looking at a guy like we talked about before with incredible arm strength, but good vision and good pocket presence, which means if you're loading the box, he's probably going to throw deep. So you probably don't want that to happen either. I don't think it's going to be as easy to do that. I think defenses are going to need to get pressure on him, which is why we talked about the offensive line early on. I think that's one way that you can disrupt him. And that's both in terms of sacks, but also getting him to have those inconsistent moments, to make the bad throw because, he's not comfortable back there. I think that's one of the big keys the defenses are going to, try to exploit with him. But the other thing I think is trying to take advantage of him holding on to the ball sometimes more than you would expect a guy in his situation to do. I honestly expect more like 8-man drops than I do, 10-man boxes, 10-man boxes this year. Because if you look at the tape, that's where he's most likely to really hurt you. Throwing the ball over the top. And you got Pierce out there and you've got Pittman out there, Jelani Woods. I would be more worried about that if I'm a defensive coordinator than I would be early on. And that's why I think Taylor being efficient, how long can you stay in those 8-man drops if Jonathan Taylor's biting off 5-6 yards every time you do it? That's where I think it's going to be. If Taylor can be efficient and Richardson can be consistent, that's when this offense becomes scary. Now, is that happen in 2023? Is it 2024? Is it 2025? That's what remains to be seen. But the potential's there. And I think that's why everyone around the building has kind of a little extra bounce in their step right now, because it's not hard to imagine the possibilities.
100%. And like you said, there's some solid weapons here. And the Colts offensive pieces that are already in the building do fit a lot of what Anthony Richardson does well. Like I said, if you have a good, run game that's established, and in some of the games that Richardson was at his best at Florida, that's what it was. It was ground and pound with the running backs. They established the run. All of a sudden, now it opens up the deep ball one-on-one. He'll take his chances. Like I said, Richardson, it's not the deep ball accuracy that's really the problem with him, or consistency. It is a lot of these short to intermediate passes that he has his most trouble with. Accuracy, putting touch on the ball at times. Like, the deep ball is pretty refined already, which is definitely a good thing. It was also not exactly, the most normal. Usually it's the other way around, that with questionable deep ball accuracy and the short intermediate stuff, a lot of quarterbacks have a lot of success with. So he's kind of the opposite in that perspective. But you're right. I think on paper right now, when you talk about Jonathan Taylor, what a scary offense could look like in 2023 and beyond, I think that's it. It's him running the ball really well, and it's Anthony Richardson then taking the top off the defense and the play action and really burning defenses. It's not so much a Lamar Jackson run-centric spread offense, zone read kind of offense, or Jalen Hurts power running. It is, I would say, a lot of the Bills kind of spread out offense. Let Richardson run when the play breaks down. He has to. A few, obviously, quarterback runs there. That's obviously going to be a part of it and should be a part of it. But it's not going to be a heavy dose of the offense where he's going to be running 11 times a game like Jalen Hurts, or he's going to lead the team in rushing yards and attempts like Lamar Jackson did this past year as well. I think it's going to be a really good balance. And obviously, as we know, balance still in the NFL is really, really hard to slow down.
Oh, right, yeah. That's, I think, one of the big differences you may see from last year, if things are going well. If this offense
big caveat.
If there's not a jailbreak pass rush on every snap and things like that, this has the potential to be a quick strike offense. And that's not something you could say the last 2 years with this team. When you saw this Colts score with Wentz or Ryan, it was usually a longer drive. It took some time. This has the potential, like Buffalo, to be one of those offenses that anywhere they are on the field, they're a threat to take it to the house.
Explosion, George? Did you say the word explosion and Colts offense in the same sentence?
Possibly.
Possibly.
Not ready to go there yet. Possibly.
Quick strike. I mean, you're right. Last year, it was just a plodding offense. That was when they're having success. It was still tough to watch with these 10, 12, 15 play drives that would take up 8 minutes a pop. It was, I think it definitely, like I said, if things progress this year, next year, 3 years from now, definitely, I think a big 180 for what we saw, especially in 2022 for sure. But you mentioned it before, talking, hinting about some protection issues. Now that we are in early May, obviously, as we know, free agency period has come and gone. No real big signings. The draft has come and gone. Obviously, the Colts have adjusted some needs. You, though, George, sit here on May 9th, still have one big concern, one big area that you think has not been addressed enough. What area of the team is that, and why?
Yeah, the offensive line depth. We sat there at the combine, and Chris Ballard told us that's going to be taken care of. There's going to be competition on this line. We're going to take care of that. The line's going to be better this year. Right now, it looks like they're mostly relying on a second-year jump from Raymond, which might happen, and Will Fry's making a jump in what would be his second year of actually being, out there on the field, and then Tony Sperano Jr., which may be a big difference. coaching may have a big part of this, but right now it looks a little bit too much like it did last year to me. I don't think it's as big a gamble as it was. You had Matt Pryor and Danny Pinner, and they both had never played the position before at the NFL level. That's a huge gamble, and it obviously backfired on them. This year, at least you've got guys who have done it, and in Raymond's case, did it pretty well at the end of the year. But I still don't think that it's where it needs to be in terms of a confidence level right now. And I would like to see a veteran behind both those guys. Now, I know Chris Hubbard came in this week or last week for a visit. We'll see if anything develops from that. He's got 40 some odd starts at right guard. I think they'll probably look at a few other guys who could possibly come in there and not just challenge Will Fries, but maybe unseat him and be that starter at the right guard spot. But tackle too. I mean, even if Raymond and Smith are the best of themselves, if Braden's back to being that Pro Bowl level right tackle that we've seen him be, and if Raymond is the guy you saw the whole last month, what happens if one of them gets hurt? And then that's just life in the NFL. You hardly ever go through the year with the 5 starters that you're projecting up there. Now you're looking at Blake Freeland, who has great potential, but very little experience as well. Somebody who's, got that project label. And Jake Witt, who's an athletic freak, but I think everybody's admitting it, around the building that's probably a 2 or 3 year project. I would like to see a Dennis Kelly type, somebody there that, okay, if there's an injury or if one of these guys is not living up to the standard that they need to, you can feel some level of confidence going in there. You mentioned earlier, before we got on the air, that's huge for a young quarterback.
Right. And you look at too, like where Richardson came from in Florida, he was playing behind a pretty solid offensive line. He was not sacked a ton. He had good, time in the pocket to make decisions. And you look at what happened last year, George, that was the total opposite. Matt Ryan was getting killed. He was bad, don't get me wrong, but I think that the issue started up front with those starting 5. And in the postseason, or after the season, press conference from Chris Ballard. And one of the areas he kind of talked about regret was, not really seriously addressing the offensive line and really not bringing in competition. You said that word just before, and you're into competition. And I expect Bernhard Raimann to be the left tackle this year. I think he should be. I think he progressed nicely enough where he has me feeling more confident in him this year than you felt confidence in Matt Pryor last year. But it's almost about the principle, George, of just like, okay, you expect Raimann to win the job, but how about you push him? Like, how about you make him earn it? One of the things Chris Ballard said last year that he regretted was he didn't really have a competition. He gave Matt Pryor the left tackle job from day one. Danny Pinter was given the right guard job from day number 1. And that competition didn't improve them to get, didn't push them to get much better. We saw the results on the field were disastrous at best. So even just put aside the injury concerns, which you're 1,000,000% right about, and there is no depth right now because, like you said, the 2 tackles especially are 2 projects you took in the draft, or maybe 3 years from now they develop into being legitimate contributors. But right now, if Bernhard Raimann goes down in week 2 or Braden Smith goes down in week 5, I mean, you are screwed. You are truly screwed. And it's just frustrating that Chris Ballard so far, yet again, has not done much to address the depth and not bring any sort of competition in to allow the best man to earn it and just get a good, kind of have iron sharpen iron. Especially when you have a rookie quarterback who we talk about protection, we talk about, throwing the deep ball. We talk about not running Anthony Richardson a ton. And we talked about his development, right, George? That's 2023 is all about development. One of the ways he does not develop is the fact that he forms bad habits because the offensive line is like last year and they can't protect. You're not throwing the deep ball when as soon as you get the ball, you drop back and there's 3 rushers in your face. That's how you develop bad habits. That's how, George, we talked about Richardson playing with his eyes up and in the pocket always, even when he's scrambling, keeping his eyes down the field. That's how you quickly undo those good habits of Florida when you have 3 rushers left and right in his face and he's all of a sudden now going to like self-preservation mode anytime he takes the ball to drop back to throw the ball.
Absolutely. I do think he will help the line a little bit because obviously he's more mobile than anybody they've had, I'll say, ever in Indy. I don't know if they've ever had anybody like this going back to 1984 in terms of his ability to move around and, make plays behind the line of scrimmage. That's going to help. He's going to cut down some sacks. He's also a tank. So if you do hit him, you better grab him and you better wrap up and you better eat your Wheaties that day, because he's not going to be easy to get on the ground. And he's also very fast. But none of that helps you if it's constant beating. I think that's what you worry about, is the wear down. Okay, the first quarter he's shrugging off that free rusher, or he's running past him, but in the fourth quarter, is he still physically able to do that, or has he been worn down enough because he's had to do it the whole game? You need those guys up front, no matter how athletic your quarterback is. And again, if they're protecting him and he's running around and doing those things, it's just that much harder to defend. If he's got time and he's able to move around and create plays, now, defense can't be right in some ways, because at some point he can throw it far enough and these receivers can run fast enough that, if there's enough time, it's almost an indefensible play as long as it throws right. So I don't get it. And I think the number one concern is what you're talking about. They're tied together. Him developing bad habits because he's got to bail the line out at times. Yeah, he can do it, but there are things that you'd rather him not do to make that happen. And then the obvious injury aspect of it. Cam Newton was a tank too, but his career was derailed by injuries. Andrew Luck was a tank and his career was derailed by injuries. So, it doesn't matter how big he is, how fast he is. You don't want him taking hits the entire game. And I'm not saying that's going to happen. Maybe Sperano is really going to make a big difference. Maybe Raymond's making the jump and he's going to be real solid over there. But like you said, that depth, there's where the concern is to me. I just not sure what happens when a sixth or seventh lineman comes in there and what that means for a rookie quarterback.
I don't know how you feel. I feel going into the year pretty good about their starting five. Like you mentioned, Tony Sperano Jr., I do think a coaching change will make this unit better. I do think Chris Strausser, with his technique, whether it's just his coaching style, went on deaf ears. I also think part of it is having two black holes at left tackle and right guard. I think Quentin Nelson, in a way, was kind of hurt by that. I think even Ryan Kelly kind of struggled, kind of in a way, kind of doing two things at once, trying to block his guy and also worry about Danny Pinter there at right guard. So I do think he's right now on paper, when you have Will Fries at right guard, Ryman at left tackle, I do think it's an upgrade from what you got last year. But like you said, one injury throws everything into a tizzy. And not to mention, Chris Ballard should know better than anyone, when you don't take the offensive line seriously, or when you have deficiencies at the offensive line, no matter how great of a quarterback you have and no matter how much research and how much weapons you put around them, you can end up losing that guy eventually if he's just taking a pounding. And Richardson right now is sculpted like a Greek god. But Andrew Luck was too. Andrew Luck was a middle linebacker playing quarterback. He would deliver harder hits than I, whatever see even some linebackers make. But after even a guy like him wore down after 3, 4, 5 years of that grueling punishment, no quarterback can possibly withstand that type of punishment. And if you're Chris Ballard, I would not feel great about the depth right now. Even if you feel better about the coaching change and the front five, great. And I do feel solid about the front five. I think they will be a lot better than they were last year. But one injury, George, like you mentioned, all of a sudden now you have a whole left tackle that could drastically, even right tackle, that could drastically change everything and kind of unravel all the hopefully good progress you make with your rookie quarterback up to that point.
And like you were talking about earlier, one of the big things here is the efficiency for Jonathan Taylor. He's busting off 5 or 6 yard runs. Now the defense has got to worry about that as well. It's going to open things up, simplify reads and things for Anthony Richardson. One of the ways that this offense goes wrong, one of the ways things get really, really bad, is if it's like last year and he's got nowhere to run and you're in 3rd and 9, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 12, there's a holding penalty, it's 3rd and 20. That's, for any quarterback, that's terrible. For a rookie quarterback, it is a recipe for disaster. That's how you end up with a lot of turnovers and sacks, because now you're trying to do too much, trying to overcome, these mega negative plays. And I feel like that's one thing that Richardson brings right away. You mentioned it earlier. You go back to Florida, there's not a lot of negative plays. Wasn't sacked a lot. Obviously isn't losing yardage on scrambles and things like that a lot. So he's not causing the negative plays a lot. But if they get into a situation where the offensive line's getting beat and they're grabbing and they're holding, it's going to happen around him. And that, again, is putting too much pressure, too much on the plate of your rookie quarterback.
100%. That's how you get off schedule. And that's when, like I said, just the workload and the intensity and what then you're asking of your rookie quarterback to constantly convert 3rd and 15s. It's not sustainable and it's not going to form good habits, which again is the worst case scenario, I would say, for the Colts in 2023, which is why you look at the two deep, George. You look at the backups on the offensive line. It is absolutely concerning when you're looking at Blake Freeland is right now at least scheduled to be the backup to Ryman. Arlington, Hambright, or Emil Ekiyor at guard, Wesley French, Danny Pinter, Jake Witt. None of those guys you feel right now good about, confident in if they have to step in because of injury, and then just holding down the fort. Don't feel good about it. The Colts had some good depth in 2019 and 2020 on the offensive lines. Even 2021, we saw them when COVID kind of ravaged through that offensive line late in the year. They were able to get contributions from certain guys. Right now, at least on paper, George, there is not a lot of depth-wise you feel good about, which is, I think you're 100% right. That has to be an area between now and training camp, but especially now in week number 1, where Ballard addresses, you sign a few, I would say, veterans to come in here and bare minimum, if nothing else, provide some competition, push Ryman to get better, push Will Fries to get better, and truly earn the job, and just, again, make the players better. Do not do what you did last year and hand players positions before training camp even starts.
No, that's where trouble gets into. Can I talk about one thing that's ultra serious now?
Yes. Oh, come on, let's do it.
I mean, the one thing I was disappointed in from the rookie mini camp, where was the backflip? I mean, that's sort of Anthony Richardson's trademark now. No backflip. Do you think it's in his contract? Don't do this.
I would love to. I bet you. I think the last backup we will probably see of him is at his pro day.
Yeah, I mean, rightfully so, right? I mean, like, it's fun to watch. A guy that big is obvious, but like, if you're a general manager or head coach, how much does that scare you? To watch your quarterback do that.
One slip. I remember I think it was 2 years ago. Lamar Jackson, like an early game against the Ravens. I don't know why against the Chiefs. I don't know why it's burned my brain. But it was like a Monday night game or Sunday night game in Baltimore. Lamar Jackson scores a late touchdown that kind of no one's around him. He like kind of just dives or does a front flip into the end zone, landed on his hip, and it was like on like the injury report for the next like month about a hip injury. Now I didn't miss any time, but it was definitely kind of more serious than it should have been. And it was one of those, that was a front flip where he had no chance of sticking the landing, whereas we've seen Anthony Richardson stick the landing. But you were one missed landing away, George, from a trip, to now all of a sudden he's on the injury list every single week.
Or an ankle or a knee. I mean, there's so many things that can go wrong with that, right?
And it's not like the Colts have had bad luck with quarterback injuries either, where they could just, afford to let him go. We're good here. You just do as many flips as you want.
Iron Men at quarterback around here. I know what you're talking about. Never an injury issue. I would love to see the contract. I wonder if it's written in there, no backflips.
Wasn't Tom Brady? I think it was Tom Brady. He like couldn't go skiing.
Yeah.
Like there was like a few like wonky, wacky contract stipulations that he could not do in the offseason. It's like he gets hurt skiing. There goes all the bonuses. There goes all, Colts quarterbacks.
Richardson hasn't signed his contract yet. I just thought about it. He's one of the unsigned draft pick. Maybe this is a sticking point.
Some rookies hold out for money or signing bonus. He said, I want to flip, damn it. Let me backflip after touchdowns. Holy cow.
They're working on a limit of flips. So many per year.
Maybe they'll like transition to like a spin or something.
Yeah, see, there's
keep his feet on the ground
here, things that can work.
I think you need something
totally ultra serious. You're not gonna get this anywhere but the Blue Horseshoe.
That's right. That is right. Breaking down the things that people truly care about, George. Speaking of which, I think it's fitting to end the podcast on this note. Andrew Luck is back helping the Colts yet again. Commanders are accused of tampering. Jim Irsay was all over any chance Jim Irsay gets, I think, at this point, to stick the knife a little deeper in Daniel Snyder's back. He's going to do so, pursuing tampering charges. Allegedly, the Commanders did reach out to Andrew Luck to see if he was willing to play. Not this year, last year, before the Commanders ended up trading for Carson Wentz, that we all saw and knew was going to work out just swimmingly. And boy, did it for them. But at least according to the Washington Post, there was no communication directly to Andrew Luck himself, his dad, or his agent. Take that for what you will, but Jim Irsay nonetheless is still pressing tampering charges, George. I guess I'll say this. I give the Commanders a lot of credit, or at least a lot of creativity for trying. I don't think there is no if I had to put my life on something outside of, you say there's 3 guarantees in life, death, taxes, and what's the third? I would say Andrew Luck never playing football again. So you got to try. You don't know until you get the answer no, but that feels like that door has been shut, locked, maybe cemented shut. Then I don't even know what else you could do to make sure the door is locked and will not never open outside of cementing it shut, but you get the idea.
Have you seen him lately? I mean, he's a lot thinner. He does not look like somebody getting ready to go out there and absorb 17 games worth of hits on a football field, nor anybody interested in him. He's a happy father right now. I think he's back at Stanford trying to get another degree. Yeah, you may see him on a football field again, like a high school field somewhere coaching. That's about it. I think he'd like to get involved in the game in some other ways. I think he's mentioned that. I think he did late in the year last year, talk about wanting to get involved maybe with youth coaching or something like that. But no, his playing days are well behind them. Good. Hopefully Washington's right and that there was no contact, because if anybody officially with that franchise had any kind of, even if there's just a text sent to somebody who's a representative of Luck or to Luck, that's tampering. If not, then hey, good thinking on your part. Nice Hail Mary. But no, Andrew Luck is done. And I think if he wasn't, there's no way Chris Ballard would trade him. So he's not going to be able to play anywhere else. That much I can absolutely guarantee you.
If I'm Jim Irsay, I'm doing 2 things here. Number one, I'm giving Andrew Luck a lifetime contract extension. Doesn't be for a lot of money, but I am locking him up to be a lifetime Colt. That's number one. Number two, I'm having Andrew Luck, or maybe even myself, leak out to sources. Andrew Luck maybe he's getting the itch to play football again, and just try to see what idiot teams take the bait, contact him illegally. And you say, what, George, if the Colts get a free 3rd-round pick or 4th-round pick every year, I think that's mission accomplished.
The gift that keeps on giving. I mean, that's not a bad plan. Just keep leaking. Luck's considering playing again and see who's, dumb enough. I don't know how many years in a row it would work, though. At some point, you would think someone's going to catch on here. But, you never know. I mean,
there are a lot of dumb teams out there, George. There are a lot of dumb ones.
Some of the emails that came out a couple of years ago make you wonder, maybe this is a good plan. Maybe this works. Maybe this is a longevity kind of a thing. I don't know.
I mean, Stephen Ross had no problem basically trying to, put Tom Brady in his own yacht to get him to come play for the Dolphins a few years ago. So I think there are some owners that just think they're above the law.
Wasn't he recruiting Jim Harbaugh one year while he still had a head coach too? Wasn't he like trying to fly Harbaugh? I think that was Stephen Ross trying to fly Harbaugh somewhere for a meeting, and he hadn't even fired his head coach. Like, come on. So yeah,
some owners right. just they look at the rule book. It's okay. That's for you guys, not me. And so you're probably right that teams will catch on eventually every year. Oh, Andrew Luck really wants to come back and play this year. But hey, it might take longer. It works for a year or two, get a free pick from it. I think that's a win.
It very well might take longer than you'd think. There's no question about that. It's worth a shot, right? I mean, it's free draft picks. So
and you look at I don't know if they're going to get a pick or you swap picks, but you look at the most recent tampering between the Eagles and the Cardinals with Jonathan Gannon. And the way they resolved that was they impermissibly reached out. I think it was I think the Monday after the Super Bowl. Like there's some sort of dead period that you're not allowed to reach out to. And the Cardinals reached out to him because the Cardinals right now are just a mess. But that little small infraction cost them their draft slot. They swapped 3rd-round picks. It was 28 slots in the 3rd round. So basically, if you're the Eagles, you go from the last pick in the 3rd round to like the first pick in the 3rd round, just for having a phone call gone wrong. If I'm Jim Irsay, I'm looking at that and saying, what do I have to do to get a similar way? Maybe I could sneak up back in the 2nd round or get back early in the 3rd round just for someone calling Andrew Luck. I'm going to do it.
I wonder if there's statute of limitations here too, since it was last year. Like at some point, is it forgiven because the Colts took too long to make the charge?
That's also a good point too. Why did it take so long?
I don't know, because it was out last year too.
Yeah,
when the same guy that put it out there this year, it was out there last year as well. Probably what you were just talking about. Honestly, probably seeing what the Cardinals had to give up and going, hey, wait a minute, maybe we can get something out of this. Because I think probably before it was more like, well, who cares? He's under contract to us. Do whatever you want. Call him, talk to him. It's not going to happen. You eventually have to call the Colts to get a trade. Like I imagine that was the thought process before, but now it's like, hey, wait a minute. Maybe there's a draft pick on the table here. Let's see what we can make happen.
Man, Andrew Luck, man, still helping out this team. Still helping out this team in small ways.
I mean, last 5 or 6 years, he probably owes a few draft picks to get that ledger back to even.
Well,
It is what
yes.
it is. I mean, they did him wrong too, with that line. So that goes both ways. He got beat
Oh,
up,
100%.
and then now the Colts are paying the price for that. Well, that's why there's so much optimism and so many eyeballs on Anthony Richardson, because it's funny because you talk about 5 or 6 years, and the people in Cleveland and Chicago are probably like, that's nothing. The 5 or 6 years of looking for a quarterback.
Yeah.
Come on now.
The
But
Lions, the Jets. There are
yeah,
plenty of teams that would take 5 or 6 years of quarterback carouseling between, hopefully getting the answers compared to the decades long droughts that they have been in. The Browns, too, have been,
mhm.
that mannequin of 20 quarterback names that have all failed. It's been ugly. But to
And
your point about Angel Luck, to wrap up, don't let that happen again. You seemingly got the guy. Learn from what happened with Andrew Luck, and don't allow history to repeat itself almost a decade later.
don't let Richardson to be the next name on that jersey that's already a little too long for the Colts starting quarterback since Luck.
Yeah.
End it here.
And that starts with getting a good front five, like you mentioned, getting some good competition, allowing Anthony Richardson to develop, get that deep ball going, get Jonathan Taylor some efficient runs again, like it's 2021 all over again, turn back the clock, and make his progression linear as much as you can in 2023 and beyond. So
Yep.
that'll do it for this edition of the Blue Horseshoe Pod. Let's just do live programming, George. Let's just peel behind the curtain because I didn't bring this up beforehand, but I want to bring it up to you now. Schedule release is Thursday. I think we should do a show Friday. Win
Why
loss.
not?
What the
Why
hell?
not?
14
Huge.
14 and 3 is my initial schedule release prediction. When
No,
we do win loss, win
17 and
loss.
0. Just going 17 and 0. I mean, come on.
Give Richardson the MVP right now
Yeah.
and get the Colts the number one seed in the AFC.
I told you multiple Lombardis this year. This year.
That will be fun. We'll see how many, if any, the Colts primetime games they do get. This is the first year where there no team, or every team is not guaranteed to get a primetime game. So there could be 0 Thursday night games for the Colts, which I'm sure they would not mind, since it seems like every team coach hates Thursday night. So that could be an opportunity. There are also some really intriguing matchups in this division where you have CJ Stroud as a rookie, obviously Trevor Lawrence really coming up and about, and we'll see with Will Levis in Tennessee. But this is one of the most interesting divisions in the NFL, just in terms of the youth at quarterback. So we'll see if any networks are intrigued by that. So we'll get the answers to primetime games. We'll finally get the schedule in order. So we'll be back on Friday to kind of react to it all right here in the Blue Horseshoe Pod. Make sure you are downloading and subscribing wherever you get your pods, and check us out on YouTube, the Blue Horseshoe Podcast. Have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you on Friday on the Blue Horseshoe Pod.